What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Right now, I want to react to what Mike Gundy had to say about Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12 to join the SEC right here on the number one ranked show. So this is a story by Chris Lowe that was published on ESPN about a couple hours after I sat down here and started talking with you about it. But the top thought here is that Gundy just laid it out there. Okay, the quote is, "They took the money and ran." That is Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC. Let's cut to the chase. They made a choice financially to secure their athletic departments for the next 12 to 15 years. And along with that, they're taking a lot of money and a lot of tradition with them. Now, that is going to perhaps feel like the most obvious statement in the world if you're an Oklahoma or a Texas fan of like, of course we did this. Who would not do this? And Gundy makes reference to that. He also says they're not the first to do it in the Big 12. Texas A&M did it, joining to the SEC. Nebraska did it, joining, yes. The Big Ten, Missouri also did it, joining the SEC. And we conveniently forget about Missouri because they really haven't been that good since leaving the Big 12. But I also thought this is interesting in that this really tells us more about Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State than it does OU or Texas. Many of you will know Mike Gundy has been head coach at Oklahoma State for 18 years now. He has never been a head coach anywhere else, and he doesn't want to be a head coach anywhere else. As much as he used to, we felt like flex in the direction of, say, a Tennessee about what he might be willing to do to get the contract that he wants from Oklahoma State. He never actually did that. And his 5-year rolling deal at Oklahoma State essentially is a lifetime deal. It renews every year for the next 5 years. That's how that works. Now, there was a brief blip where 2020 happened, and they got to take that away from him for just a little bit, and then he got it back right after Oklahoma State is able to get into the Fiesta Bowl against Notre Dame, for which he makes reference to, saying Oklahoma State can't do the things that Texas, and he name checks Notre Dame, can do because they do not have the following and they do not have the money. Many of you know that Boone Pickens Stadium is named for the most money booster in the history of Oklahoma State football, who decided he wanted football to be the main thing at Oklahoma State, a place where football being great kind of blip every 30 years or so. You had Barry Sanders, Hartley Dykes, and even Mike Gundy being a part of that with Thurman Thomas from about 1986 to about 1992. And then you fall off a cliff, right? And then Mike Gundy follows up Les Miles, and they get this sustained bit of excellence. What I also thought was more interesting about this is that Mike Gundy kind of shares a pedestal with Kirk Ferentz, with Brian Kelly, with a number of other great college football coaches, in that they go get ranked AP wins. As a matter of fact, they're going to begin this season as the number 12 team in the country, following what was a banner year for them in the Big 12, falling about 6 inches short of winning the Big 12 championship. But he's also not unwise to know that the television markets that the Big 10 is in, that the SEC are in, or that's where you want to be. He also is kind of comfortable being the third biggest conference in that pond. More than anything else, he is very happy at Stillwater. He's very happy with the administration who believes in him, who has cocooned him. And people don't leave Oklahoma State. Not really. It's a very good place to work. I went there for graduate school for a couple of years before I was fortunate enough to get the job that I did want, right? Because that's why you go to college, to get the job you do want. And that came to me. But that's the thing that you get about Stillwater. People that root for Oklahoma State, they root for Oklahoma State, period. Whether it's meat judging, wrestling, or football, they are about it. Whereas at Oklahoma, football is always going to be the main thing. And if football is not working, it cannot not work for very long before somebody makes a change. I dare say that Mike Gundy will get to pick his shot, call his shot on when he chooses to retire as head coach at Oklahoma State. And that might be as soon as Gunnar Gundy gets through with his career at OSU. But it's also important to note that Mike Gundy is of the state of Oklahoma, which is why he and I, it's kind of interesting in that we both love this place. And we're both from either part of the turnpike. I should say Turner Turnpike connects Tulsa to Oklahoma City, the two largest cities in the state of Oklahoma. And he's from a suburb in Midwest City, and I'm obviously from Tulsa. And I went to the University of Tulsa in Oklahoma. He went to Oklahoma State, did a couple of years at Baylor in Maryland, and came back home. His brother Cale had been at Oklahoma as an assistant coach for the better part of 20 years. And had been quarterback at Oklahoma. The Gundys are as Oklahoma gets. Mike Gundy also has a lot of business ventures in the state of Oklahoma, and it behooves him to be about this state. But he's also acknowledging that there's only so much that he gets to do at Oklahoma State. And one of those things, I think, is not to take the money and run, because if Oklahoma State wanted to put themselves up to the SEC, what would the SEC have to say about that is interesting. Would you take them? Maybe, probably not. But it's not the same as looking at Oklahoma and Texas, who would like to come. You're just going to say yes, because you know they're bringing all this with them. Texas is one of the most moneyed programs in all of college sports. Oklahoma is one of 10 programs that makes money every year from football. Football is a loss leader for most universities. And I think Gundy speaking to this is the most interesting part of it. It also tells us what we can expect from Oklahoma State in the coming years, as they are going to enter into a new Big 12 come 2024. They're going to welcome teams like BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, and Central Florida. Mike Gundy, I think, is asserting himself as the leader of this group, right? In the way that Oklahoma and or Texas once were in the Big 12. It's now his Big 12. I think that's the take here. And I think it will be his Big 12 for as long as he wants it to be, because he's able to find good talent in Oklahoma and Texas and compete and win 9, 10, 11 games pretty consistently. Last thing I'd add to this is with that new rollover contract that came into effect in March, $33.25 million over the next 5 years, and then $1 million stay bonus if he's still the coach at the end of each calendar year. 5-year rolling clause. That means that for 5 years, it's yours every year. It's a really good place to be. So you feel empowered to talk to ESPN and tell them exactly what you think and how you feel about the two biggest brands in what used to be their conference choosing to leave you and others behind. It's nice to be the big fish in a little pond. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Number One Ranked Show. As always, my thanks to lead producer Tyler Wojak, who's on this call, keeping me honest, keeping me on time. Our director is John Marcus. Our social media maven is Javion Duncan. Our lead of screening is Rachel Cohn. And Catherine Donnelly is our coordinating producer. All right, see y'all in a couple of days. Deuces. Thanks for watching this video. And remember, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos on the Number One Ranked Show YouTube channel.